with Todd Eilers, who is the founder and I guess we could say chief principal of Eilers and Krejcik Gaming, which is a research and consultancy that Todd, when you started, I don't think you ever believed it would be as broad and successful an enterprise as it's turned out to be.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was kind of hoping to just make a living getting some of our research out to and building up a little bit of a subscriber base. So definitely been pleasantly surprised with the growth we've seen over the last couple of years. We've launched some new verticals and hired some folks, and it's been a lot of fun, and certainly appreciate the partnership we've had over the years with some of our products like the survey and game performance database. But it's definitely been a fun ride and better than expected. So.
Good things happen to good people, Todd. You have three basic, use the word verticals, one of which is sports betting, which is headed up by a guy named Chris Grove, who does a great job. Another one is digital interactive, which is headed up by the Krejcik part of Eilers and Krejcik. And the initial one is yours, and that's slot machines, which is very appropriate for G2E. And one of the things that we discussed before the camera rolled is that there's the death of the slot machine is premature. The slot machine industry is actually pretty healthy and growing, and maybe you could talk a little bit about your observations in that area and some of those dynamics.
Absolutely. Slots are not dead, for sure, and don't foresee that happening anytime in the future. The industry is very healthy. A lot of competition out there from the vendors. There'll be a lot of great games, technologies, hardware on display this week. Very exciting week for our firm to be out here and kind of tracking the latest and greatest and trying to uncover some of those underlying themes in the market. But yeah, slots are not dead, very healthy. A $7 billion kind of B2B market for the slot vendors. And the buy does continue to grow. And you know, I'm very excited to see what all the vendors have on display this week.
What are some of the trends that you see?
Sure. So some of the trends, you'll start out maybe on the product side. Some of the key trends that we've seen really over the last several years, certainly on the hardware side. Hardware still matters. It's always mattered, and it still does. And so you'll see a lot of curved slot machines, a lot of we're now in iteration 2 and 3 of the curved machines. Now they're J-shaped and S-shaped, and I'm sure we'll see, I don't know, maybe a W-shaped or something like that. I don't know, but it still does matter. You'll see, very large format slot machines. You'll see touchscreen button decks, wireless charging stations on the button deck. Suppliers continue to add more functionality on the hardware side, so that's number one. Number two, Asian-themed game content continues to resonate in the market. You'll continue to see more of that, I think, in the next couple of years. And all the vendors also are trying to put games out there that are trying to attract to a younger demographic. So when they're a little bit older and might be a little bit more interested in spending more in a casino and playing slots, that they have the right product that's gonna fit for that player base. And so that's still very early stage. You still have a lot of skill-based games that are we're now on iteration 2 and 3 of the product development cycle there. Electronic table games is a trend we've seen that continues to kind of grow on the floor. So those are just some of the product trends that we've seen.
Skill-based, 3 or 4 years ago, it was like the buzzword. And it's never quite, it didn't crash through. Maybe it's still developing. How do you see skill-based today, and how much future do you believe is there for skill-based?
Yeah, I definitely think, as with any sort of new technology or a new opportunity, the media kind of overhypes things initially, and then you never really see that right away, and then that the hype kind of goes away and everyone forgets about it, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We're on generation 2, really, for the most part, of a lot of these skill games. And as to be expected, a lot of the first games that were introduced were not, all that great, to be frank. But I think what you're going to see is those companies learn from that and put better product out. So I really am looking forward to seeing what some of those companies have to offer. I definitely think there's an opportunity for sure, but they will really need to continue to make improvements, continue to see what works and refine their product to the point where there's enough kind of critical mass from a new player base that comes to play those games that it really does truly matter for a casino. And once you kind of hit that point, then it's very much a fast follower industry, and you could really see things take off.
Electronic table games, you touched on that. Interblock this year is unveiling a solitary one-seat table game with the idea that the slot machine player who maybe has not been comfortable playing live tables, maybe also isn't quite as comfortable playing with a 5 or 6 seat electronic table, but a single table, that is the slot machine experience. Tell us a little bit about how you see the electronic table game part of the business evolving, and how big do you think it might be?
Yeah, so I definitely think that continues to be an area of growth on casino floors. It's been a long process for those vendors and that market. The initial kind of reluctance, I think, from casinos to add those games was they always compared them to slot machines, which was kind of unfair because the games don't really play as fast as a slot machine is, so the velocity of gameplay is not quite there. But they definitely have carved out a niche area within the casino floor. They're no longer, I think, incorrectly so, no longer compared to slot machines, also no longer compared directly to table game players. It's kind of a third, area on the casino floor. It's definitely attracted a new type of customer, a little bit younger, a little bit less sophisticated on table game play. And so I definitely see that market continuing to grow. I mean, if there's a lot of potential in North America, if you were to look at international markets as kind of a benchmark, I mean, to compare the two, in North America right now, ETGs make up about 1.8% of the casino floor in terms of game stations. In a lot of international markets, whether it's in Asia or Europe, I mean, that could be almost 50%. And so there's tons of opportunities, and I think Aristocrat's a great company. They've put out a lot of great products over the years. They're one of the leaders in the space. I think anytime you can kind of innovate and add additional products in that category, I think I would bet with them. They've been successful so far over the last decade.
We used to think about slot machines and we thought about casinos. Today you have things like historical horse racing, which is a slot machine and with game outcomes based on a random draw from previously run parimutuel races, and they're set up in kind of a parimutuel format. You've got distributed gaming as more states legalize the slot machines that maybe already operate in places like the local Elks Club or VFW Hall. How do you see that game industry, I guess you could call it, evolving beyond the traditional casino slot machine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting, some interesting markets to track that are outside of the normal, commercial casino and even tribal markets for that matter. We kind of lump everything into we call it route markets, and I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity. Right now there's about 110,000 games in what we would define as a route market, which is more of a distributed type market with a small number of games and a very large number of locations. again, if you kind of look to other more mature gaming markets like in Europe, route markets are very large, hundreds of thousands of games. So I definitely think the evolution of the North American market, I think you definitely will see more of those opportunities as we go forward. And then also non-traditional markets, as you mentioned, the historical horse racing market, we call it HHR games. Kentucky has those games at the racetracks. Virginia has passed laws and regulations that allow those sorts of games. I think you'll be at about 10,000 games at some point over the next year or two with the development projects that are in the works just from those two markets alone. There are also some other smaller markets that have those games. They look and play very similar to slot machines, but the outcome of the game is derived from a horse racing event, and so they're certainly legal. And I think you'll see more markets move in that direction where they are limited on the traditional gaming casino sense. There's also in the charity markets, there's games like electronic pull tab games that also look very similar to a VLT or a slot machine device, and in many cases perform very similar. We've seen that market start to take off as well. So the demand is out there, and I think you will continue to see states always in search of additional tax revenue, take advantage of the opportunities that present them in whatever fashion they might be.
And I suspect, and we're starting to see this, I believe, already in historical horse racing, that as these segments of the industry grow larger, that the mainstream suppliers enter them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In the horse racing market, Ainsworth is one of the main players on the traditional slot side. Has entered the HHR market. Wouldn't surprise me if you saw maybe another vendor or two get into that market as well. On the distributed gaming side, that's traditionally been, or the route side, traditionally been IGT and Scientific Games have done very well in those markets, but you're now seeing companies like Aristocrat, which traditionally have done very well in the casino portion of the market, have now developed products for the route markets. Companies like Inspired Entertainment and Novomatic, traditionally strong in the European markets, which are big route markets, are seeing an opportunity in the U.S. and are investing in those markets here as well. And so you definitely have seen a lot of that over the last several years.
Okay, well, Todd, thanks. It's a very informative overview.
Thanks a lot, Frank.